The space around New Busan burned with the light of dying ships. Admiral Vextai stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching human vessels explode in the darkness. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease. The humans had fought harder than expected, but they would still lose. "Admiral, the human colony is defenseless now," his second officer reported. "We can begin the cleansing operation." Vextai nodded. The galactic hegemony had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. They had spread across space too quickly after discovering faster-than-light travel. The 12 species of the hegemony agreed that these primitive apes needed to be stopped before they became a real threat. But something felt wrong. Vextai had fought many wars, conquered many worlds. Usually defeated enemies begged for mercy or tried to run away. The humans did neither. Even as their ships exploded around them, they kept fighting. Even as their friends died, they kept trying to protect the colony below. "Sir, we have an emergency," the weapons officer called out. 3 human ships are approaching at maximum speed. They're on a collision course. Vextai looked at the tactical display. 3 small human ships were racing toward his massive dreadnought. They had no weapons that could hurt his ship. What were they trying to do? "Destroy them," he ordered. The ship's powerful guns fired, but the human ships were moving too fast and too close together. One exploded in a ball of fire. The second took heavy damage but kept coming. The third ship, badly wounded, still flew straight at them. "They're trying to ram us," someone shouted. Vextai realized what the humans were doing. They knew they couldn't win a normal fight, so they were sacrificing themselves to damage his ship. It was stupid. It was desperate. But it was also brave in a way that made his chest feel strange. The first human ship struck his vessel near the engine section. The second hit the main gun array. The third, barely holding together, crashed into the bridge tower. Vextai felt his ship shake and heard metal tearing apart. Emergency lights flashed red across the bridge. Damage reports came from every section. His mighty dreadnought, pride of the hegemony fleet, was dying. "Abandon ship," he ordered his crew. But before he could reach the escape pods, a piece of burning metal fell from the ceiling and struck his head. Everything went dark. When Vextai woke up, he was lying in a small, clean room. Soft light came from panels in the ceiling. The air smelled strange, not like the recycled atmosphere of a ship. His head hurt, and when he tried to move, he found his arms were secured to the bed. A door opened, and a human female entered. She was smaller than Vextai, with dark hair tied back and wearing a white coat. She moved slowly, carefully, as if trying not to frighten him. "You're awake," she said in basic hegemony standard. Her accent was terrible, but he could understand her. "I am Dr. Kim Sora. You have been hurt. I need to check your injuries." Vextai stared at her. This was his first time seeing a human up close. They looked so much like the mammals from his own homeworld, but they walked upright and had only 2 arms. Her eyes were dark and showed no hatred, even though he had come here to destroy her people. "Where am I?" he asked. "You are on New Busan Colony. You are our prisoner, but you are safe. No one will hurt you here." This confused Vextai. In hegemony culture, prisoners of war were questioned harshly and often killed. Why was this human being kind to him? Dr. Kim Sora moved around the bed, checking machines that monitored his health. When she found a cut on his arm, she carefully cleaned it and put medicine on it. Her touch was gentle. "Why do you help me?" Vextai asked. "I came here to kill your people." The human doctor was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because you are hurt and I am a doctor. It is what I do." Over the next few days, Vextai learned more about human behavior. Guards brought him food 3 times a day. The food was simple but good. When he asked for water, they brought it quickly. When he said the room was too cold, they brought him warm blankets. But the strangest thing was what he saw through his window. The detention center was next to a medical building where human doctors treated wounded soldiers from both sides. Vextai watched human medics carrying injured hegemony prisoners to surgery. He saw human nurses feeding hegemony soldiers who couldn't feed themselves. One day he saw something that made him feel sick inside. A young human guard was sharing his lunch with a hegemony prisoner who had not eaten in 2 days. The prisoner had killed humans during the battle. Vextai was sure of it. But the human guard smiled and laughed as they tried to talk to each other without sharing a language. "This is wrong," Vextai said to Dr. Kim Sora during her next visit. "We are enemies. We came here to destroy you. Why do you treat us like friends?" Dr. Kim Sora sat down in the chair next to his bed. She looked tired, like she had been working for many hours. "We know why you came here," she said. "But we also know that you were told lies about us. We wanted to be friends with the hegemony. We sent peaceful messages for months before the war started. We never wanted to fight." "You are lying," Vextai said, but he didn't feel certain anymore. "I will show you the messages we sent," Dr. Kim Sora said. "I will show you everything. We have nothing to hide." That night, Vexithai could not sleep. He thought about what he had seen and heard. The humans acted nothing like the savage beasts described in hegemony reports. They were organized, intelligent, and surprisingly gentle. Even as prisoners of war, his people were treated better here than some soldiers were treated in hegemony hospitals. He thought about the human ships that had rammed his vessel. Those pilots had died to save their colony. They could have run away, but they chose to sacrifice themselves for others. That took a kind of courage that Vextai respected, but it also raised terrible questions. If the humans weren't monsters, then what was the hegemony really doing here? And if they were wrong about humans, what else might they be wrong about? Outside his window, he could see human children playing in a park. They laughed and ran around like children on any world. These were the people his fleet had come to kill. The thought made his stomach turn. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Vextai wondered if the hegemony might be making a terrible mistake. Captain Park Minho entered the detention room carrying a chair and a small table. He was a tall human with calm eyes and an easy smile. Unlike the guards, he wore no weapons. He set up his chair across from Vextai's bed and placed the table between them. "Good morning, Admiral," he said in surprisingly good hegemony standard. "I am Captain Park Minho. I hope you are feeling better today." Vextai studied this new human carefully. Park Minho moved with the confidence of a warrior, but he sat down slowly and kept his hands visible. Everything about his body language said he was not a threat. "You are here to question me," Vextai said. "I am here to talk with you," Park Minho replied. "There is a difference, and what do you want to know?" Park Minho leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about yourself, Admiral. What is your homeworld like? Do you have family?" This was not what Vextai expected. Hegemony interrogations focused on military information and strategic plans. They didn't waste time on personal details. "Why do you care about my family?" Vextai asked. "Because you are not just an enemy soldier to us. You are a person with a life and people who care about you. We want to understand who you are." Despite himself, Vextai found himself talking. He told Park Minho about his homeworld, Kethvar with its purple mountains and silver seas. He spoke about his mate and their 3 offspring, who were studying at the military academy. He described the honor of serving in the hegemony fleet and protecting civilization from chaos. Park Minho listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. He seemed genuinely interested in hegemony culture and traditions. When Vextai mentioned the Feast of 7 Moons, a holy celebration on his world, Park Minho asked about the meaning behind the rituals. "You know much about our ways," Vextai observed. "We have studied your people for years," Park Minho said. "We wanted to understand you before we made contact. We thought if we knew your culture, we could become friends." "Then why did you attack our exploration ships?" Park Minho's face showed genuine confusion. "Admiral, we never attacked your ships. Your people fired first, at our peaceful contact vessel near the Rigel system. We lost 43 diplomats and scientists in that attack." "That is not true," Vextai said quickly. "Our report said your ships opened fire without warning." "I can show you the recordings," Park Minho offered. "We have video from 12 different angles. Our ship was broadcasting friendship messages in 17 languages, including yours. We never even powered up our weapons." Vextai felt cold inside. If Park Minho was telling the truth, then everything about this war was built on lies. But why would the Hegemony War Council lie to their own people? Over the following days, Park Minho returned again and again. Each time he brought new information that challenged what Vextai believed about humans. He showed recordings of human attempts at peaceful contact. He shared scientific papers where human researchers praised hegemony technology and culture. He even played music that human composers had written to honor the 12 species of the hegemony. "We call this conflict the Misunderstanding War," Park Minho explained during one visit. "We believe it started because of poor communication and fear on both sides. My people do not make mistakes like that," Vextai said, but his voice lacked conviction. "All people make mistakes, Admiral." The wise ones learn from them. Park Min-ho also showed Vextai something that troubled him deeply. Through the window, he could see human families visiting their wounded soldiers in the medical center. But he also saw hegemony families who had somehow reached New Busan to visit their captured relatives. How did they get here? Vextai asked. We are deep in human space. We sent ships to bring them, Park Min-ho said simply. Family should be together during difficult times. You sent ships into a war zone to bring enemy families here? We promised safe passage. No human ship would fire on vessels carrying families. Vextai stared at him. That is madness. We could have used those ships to spy on your defenses or plan attacks. Yes, you could have, Park Min-ho agreed. But you didn't. Your people kept their word about the family visits just as we kept ours. This simple trust between enemies made no sense to Vextai. In every war he had fought, both sides used every advantage they could find. Mercy was seen as weakness. Honor meant victory at any cost, but humans seemed to operate by different rules. They showed mercy even when it might hurt them. They kept promises even to their enemies. They treated prisoners well even when those prisoners had tried to kill them. One evening, Park Min-ho brought a small device that projected holographic images in the air. He showed Vextai pictures from across human space. These are some of our worlds, he said. Vextai saw cities that mixed technology with nature. He saw humans of many different colors and sizes working together. He saw art, music, and festivals that celebrated life and creativity. He saw children playing and learning in schools that taught them about other species, including the hegemony. Your children learn about us? Vextai asked. Of course, we wanted them to understand that the galaxy is full of different peoples with different ways of life. We hoped they would grow up ready to make friends with species like yours. But you also prepared for war. Park Min-ho's expression grew sad. Yes, we did. We hoped for friendship, but we prepared for the worst. When your people started attacking our ships and colonies, we had to defend ourselves. You could have surrendered, Vextai pointed out. The hegemony is much larger and stronger than humanity. Some of our leaders suggested that, Park Min-ho admitted. They said we should give up our independence and become a client species under hegemony rule. But we decided that some things are worth fighting for. Like what? Like the right to choose our own path. Like the freedom to explore and learn and grow. Like the hope that someday all the species in the galaxy might work together as equals instead of rulers and servants. That night, Vextai lay awake thinking about everything Park Min-ho had shown him. The humans had detailed knowledge of hegemony culture, but they had also developed their own unique civilization. They were not the savage, chaotic beasts described in hegemony propaganda. They were organized, thoughtful, and surprisingly wise. But they were also stronger than anyone in the hegemony realized. Their technology was more advanced than intelligence reports suggested. Their ships were faster and their weapons more accurate than expected. Yet they fought with restraint, targeting military installations instead of civilian populations. The more Vextai learned about humans, the more he realized that his people had made a terrible error in judgment. They had started a war with beings who wanted to be friends, and they were losing that war to an enemy who refused to be as cruel as they could be. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextai began to question whether the hegemony was always right, and that thought frightened him more than any human weapon ever could. Dr. Kim Sora was examining a small cut on Vextai's neck when she made the mistake that changed everything. The wound was healing well, and she seemed pleased with his progress. This should be completely healed in a few days, she said, putting away her medical scanner. It's fortunate you were captured before the sleeping fleet awakens. The medical facilities here are much better than what we have on the deep space stations. Vextai went very still. What did you say? Dr. Kim Sora's eyes went wide and her face turned pale. She had clearly said something she shouldn't have. I misspoke. I meant the reserve medical units. No, Vextai said slowly. You said sleeping fleet. Well, what is the sleeping fleet? Dr. Kim Sora backed toward the door looking frightened. I need to get Captain Park Min-ho. Doctor, please. What is the sleeping fleet? But she was already gone, leaving Vextai alone with 1,000 new questions burning in his mind. A sleeping fleet suggested ships that were hidden, waiting somewhere. But humans only had a few dozen vessels in their entire space navy. The hegemony had counted them carefully before starting the war, hadn't they? An hour later, Commander Lee Ji-won entered the room. She was a middle-aged human woman with short gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer. Behind her came Captain Park Minho, looking uncomfortable. "Admiral Vexthai," Commander Lee Ji-wan said. "Dr. Kim Sora has told me about her mistake. We have a decision to make." "What decision?" Commander Lee Ji-wan pulled up a chair and sat down close to his bed. Her eyes were serious but not unkind. "We can either tell you the truth or we can keep lying to you like everyone else has been lying since this war started," she said. "Captain Park tells me you're an honorable being who cares about your people, so I'm going to trust you with information that could change everything." Vexthai felt his heart's beating faster. "What truth?" "The truth about humanity's real military strength," Commander Lee Ji-wan said. "The truth about why we've been fighting this war the way we have. The truth about what will happen if peace talks fail." She activated a holographic projector on the table. A star map appeared in the air, showing the galaxy with human and hegemony territories marked in different colors. "This is what your intelligence services think they know about our fleet," she said. Numbers appeared next to the human worlds, showing ship counts and defensive capabilities. 47 vessels of various sizes. Enough to defend our core worlds, but not enough to win a war against the hegemony. "That matches our reports," Vexthai confirmed. "Those reports are correct," Commander Lee Ji-wan said. "Those ships do exist, and they are exactly where your spies say they are." "Then what is the sleeping fleet?" The star map changed. Suddenly, new markers appeared throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Ship signatures scattered across empty space, hiding in asteroid fields, drifting in the dark between stars. Vexthai stared at the display in shock. "This cannot be real." "Every marker represents a human vessel that has been waiting in cold storage for the past 18 months, Commander Lee Ji-wan said quietly. "Their crews are in hibernation. Their engines are powered down. Their weapons are offline. But they're there." "How many?" Vexthai whispered. "The ships you've been fighting represent 12% of humanity's total fleet strength," she said. "The other 88% has been sleeping, waiting to see if peace was possible." The numbers were impossible. If this was true, then the hegemony hadn't been fighting humanity at all. They had been fighting a tiny fraction of human forces while the real fleet waited in the darkness. "Why?" Vexthai asked. "Why hide your strength? You could have ended this war in days." Captain Park Minho spoke for the first time since entering the room, "because we hoped we wouldn't need to use it. We wanted to see what the hegemony would do when faced with determined resistance. Would you negotiate? Would you show mercy to captured humans? Would you target only military assets, or would you start killing civilians? You were testing us," Vexthai realized. "We were giving you a chance to be better than you appeared to be," Commander Lee Ji-wan said. "Some of our leaders believed the hegemony could be reasoned with. They convinced the rest of us to try a limited war first to see if we could find a peaceful solution. And if you couldn't?" The holographic display changed again. New information appeared, showing projected battle outcomes if the full human fleet activated. The results were devastating. Hegemony forces would be outnumbered 5-1. Their supply lines would be cut. Their homeworlds would be surrounded. The war would be over in 72 hours, Commander Lee Ji-wan said. But millions of hegemony citizens would die in the crossfire. Entire civilizations would be destroyed. That's not the kind of victory we want. Vexthai felt sick. His people had been so confident in their superiority, so certain that primitive humans couldn't threaten them. But humans had been holding back the entire time, fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. "Show me one of your sleeping ships," he said. Commander Lee Ji-wan and Captain Park Minho exchanged glances. Then she nodded and adjusted the controls. The display focused on a region of empty space near the hegemony border. "Computer Wake Hibernation Unit 77 Alpha." The display showed a section of space that looked completely empty. Then slowly, running lights began to appear. A massive shape emerged from the darkness as a human dreadnought came online. Even through the holographic display, Vexthai could see that it was larger than his own flagship had been. Its weapon arrays glowed with energy signatures that his instruments had never detected before. "How many ships like this do you have?" he asked weakly. "That's one of our smaller vessels," Commander Lee Ji-wan said. "Admiral, your people started this war because they believed humans were too primitive and weak to matter. But we've been preparing for contact with galactic civilization for over a century. We've been building, learning, and growing stronger every year. We never meant to deceive anyone," Captain Park Minho added. "We genuinely wanted to be friends with the hegemony." But we also knew that showing too much strength too quickly might frighten other species into attacking us first. Vexithai thought about all the battles he had fought, all the human ships he had destroyed. The humans had let him win some of those fights. They had sacrificed their people to maintain the illusion of weakness, all in the hope that peace might still be possible. "Your government knows about this fleet?" he asked. "Our military commanders have been begging permission to activate it for months," Commander Li Jiwan said. "But our civilian leaders keep saying no. They still believe diplomacy can work. What changed their minds?" "Nothing has changed their minds," she said grimly. "But yesterday the Hegemony War Council voted to begin targeting human civilian populations. They're planning to destroy our colonies and kill billions of innocent people." Vexthai felt his blood turn cold. "No, the Hegemony doesn't wage war on civilians." "They do now," Captain Park Minho said sadly. "We intercepted the orders 3 hours ago. The attack begins in 60 hours unless the War Council reverses its decision. And if they don't," Commander Li Jiwan's expression was grim, "then the sleeping fleet wakes up and this war ends. But not the way anyone wanted it to." The room fell silent. Vexthai stared at the holographic display, watching the human dreadnought slowly return to hibernation mode. Its lights dimmed and it disappeared back into the darkness, waiting. He realized that humanity had given the Hegemony a gift that his people didn't even know they had received. They had been allowed to fight a war without facing humanity's full strength. They had been given time to learn and understand their enemy. They had been offered countless opportunities to choose peace over destruction. Now that gift was about to be taken away, and the galaxy would see what humans were really capable of when they stopped holding back. The communication device sat on the table like a coiled snake. It was small and silver, no bigger than Vexthai's hand, but it could connect him directly to the Hegemony War Council across thousands of light-years of space. Commander Li Jiwan had placed it there an hour ago, along with a simple offer that was tearing Vexthai's soul apart. "You can contact your leaders," she had said. "Tell them what you've learned here. Help us end this war before it becomes something terrible. And if I refuse, then in 67 hours the sleeping fleet activates. The war ends anyway, but not with words." Now Vexthai sat alone, staring at the device and wrestling with the hardest decision of his life. Everything he had sworn to believe was crumbling around him. His people, his government, his entire understanding of right and wrong was being challenged by these strange, impossible humans. Captain Park Minho entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. He set one down beside Vexthai and kept the other for himself. "It's a blend from your homeworld," Park Minho said. "Dr. Kim Sora thought you might be homesick." Vexthai lifted the cup and breathed in the familiar scent. It smelled exactly like the tea his mate served him every morning on Kethvar. "How do you have this?" "We've been trading with neutral merchants for years, learning about all the hegemony species. We wanted to understand your cultures before we met you officially." The tea tasted like home, like purple sunrises and silver seas. It made Vexthai's chest ache with longing for a world he might never see again. "Captain, why are you really fighting this war?" he asked. Park Minho sat down across from him. "Because we believe every species has the right to exist freely. Because we think the galaxy is big enough for all of us to find our own paths. Because we hope that someday our children and your children might explore the stars together as friends. And you would risk everything for that hope? What's the point of surviving if you can't live the way you believe is right?" Through the window, Vexithai could see the human medical center. Even now, hours before a deadline that could doom both their species, human doctors were working to save hegemony soldiers. He watched a young human nurse helping an elderly hegemony prisoner walk to the garden. The old soldier's legs had been damaged in battle, but the human supported him patiently, smiling as they moved slowly between the flower beds. "Show me the projections again," Vexithai said. Park Minho activated the holographic display. The tactical analysis appeared in the air, cold and precise. If the human sleeping fleet activated, hegemony forces would be completely overwhelmed. Their supply convoys would be destroyed, their reinforcement routes cut off, their homeworlds surrounded by human vessels. But the projections also showed casualty estimates. Billions of hegemony civilians would be caught in the crossfire. Entire worlds would be devastated. The war would end quickly, but the cost would be horrific. "Your people have planned for evacuation?" Vexthai asked. "As much as possible," Park Minho said sadly. "We've been broadcasting warnings on all frequencies. telling civilian populations to move to safe zones. We've even sent supply drops to help with the evacuations. You're helping enemy civilians escape? They're not our enemies. They're just people who happen to live in a territory controlled by our enemies. Most of them probably don't even understand why this war is being fought. Vexthai thought about his own people back home, his mate working in the research laboratories, his offspring studying at the academy, his elderly parents tending their garden and watching the news with growing fear. None of them had asked for this war. None of them deserved to die for the decisions of the War Council. If I contact the Council, what would you want me to say? The truth, Park Min-ho said. Whatever you believe that to be. A soft knock on the door interrupted them. A young human technician entered, carrying a small potted plant. She was barely more than a child with bright eyes and a shy smile. "Excuse me," she said in broken hegemony standard. "I am Cho Yuna, I work in communications. I brought you something." She set the plant on the windowsill. It was a flowering vine from Vexthai's homeworld, with tiny purple blossoms that released a sweet fragrance. "I heard you were sad," Cho Yuna said. "Plants from home help with sadness. My grandmother taught me that." Vexthai stared at her in amazement. "Where did you get this?" "I grew it from seeds. We have a garden where we grow plants from all the hegemony worlds. Someday when the war is over, we want to trade flowers and trees and food with your people." She smiled at him, that strange human expression that showed teeth but somehow conveyed friendship instead of threat. Then she left quietly, leaving behind the scent of home and a simple act of kindness that cut straight through Vexthai's heart. "She's just a child," he said. "She's 22 years old," Park Min-ho said, "old enough to serve in our military. But she chose to work in agriculture and communications instead. She says growing things is more important than destroying them." Vexthai touched one of the tiny flowers. It was perfect, exactly like the ones that grew wild on the hills around his family home. This human child had spent time and effort growing something beautiful, just to make an enemy prisoner feel less alone. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you have family?" Park Min-ho's expression grew soft. "A wife and 2 daughters. They live on Earth in a city called Seoul. My wife is a teacher and my daughters are studying to become doctors." "Are you afraid for them?" "Every day," Park Min-ho admitted. "But I'm more afraid of the galaxy my daughters will inherit if we don't find a way to end this hatred between our peoples. What if the War Council refuses to listen?" Park Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'll go home to my family and hope that someday species like ours can learn to understand each other. But first, a lot of good people are going to die unnecessarily." That evening, Vexthai sat alone with the communication device. He had composed a dozen different messages in his mind, but none of them felt right. How could he explain what he had learned here? How could he make the War Council understand that everything they believed about humans was wrong? He thought about Cho Yuna's flower, about Dr. Kim Sora's gentle hands treating his wounds, about Park Min-ho's patient explanations and obvious love for his family. He thought about the human guards who shared their food with hegemony prisoners, and the nurses who worked around the clock to save lives. These weren't the savage beasts described in hegemony propaganda. These were people who had chosen mercy over vengeance, understanding over hatred, hope over fear. They were people who grew flowers from other worlds and dreamed of a future where all species could be friends. But they were also people with enough hidden military power to destroy the hegemony completely. They had shown remarkable restraint so far, but that restraint wouldn't last forever. Not when their own civilians were being threatened. Vexthai picked up the communication device. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do, even if it meant betraying everything he had once believed in. The War Council needed to hear the truth. Not about human military strength, but about human character. They needed to understand that they weren't fighting monsters, but people who still hoped for peace even after everything that had happened. He activated the device and waited for the connection to establish. In a few moments, he would be speaking to the most powerful beings in the hegemony. What he said next could save billions of lives, or it could make him a traitor to his own species. The communication light turned green. It was time to choose between loyalty to his government and loyalty to what he now knew was right. The War Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Vexthai's image appeared on the massive holographic display. The 12 most powerful leaders in the hegemony stared at their captured officer, surprised to see him alive and apparently unharmed. Supreme Chancellor Colthara leaned forward in her ceremonial chair. Admiral Vexthai, you are well? Have the humans tortured you for information? No, Chancellor, Vexthai replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. They have treated me with kindness and respect, better than some of our own soldiers are treated in hegemony hospitals. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. War Council member Nixvoran scowled. Kindness? From primitive savages? Admiral, have they drugged you? Used mind control devices? No, Honored Council. I am speaking freely and of my own will. I contacted you because there are things you must know before you proceed with the civilian attacks you have planned. Chancellor Colthara's eyes narrowed. How do you know about classified military operations? Because the humans intercepted your communications. They know about your plans to target their civilian populations. And Chancellor, if you proceed with those attacks, you will destroy the hegemony. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several council members shouted accusations of treason. Others demanded to know what the humans had done to their admiral. Chancellor Colthara raised her hand for silence. Explain yourself, Admiral. Vexthai took a deep breath. In the background of his transmission, he could see Dr. Kim Sora and Captain Park Minho standing quietly, giving him the privacy to speak freely to his own people. Honored Council, everything we believe about humanity is wrong. They are not primitive savages. They are not chaotic barbarians. They are an advanced civilization that has been showing us mercy since this war began. Mercy? Nixavoran spat. They have killed thousands of our people. And we have killed thousands of theirs, Vexthai replied. But council members, they could have killed millions. The fleet we have been fighting represents only 12% of their total military strength. The chamber fell completely silent. Chancellor Colthara's face went pale. What are you saying? I am saying that humanity has been fighting this war with one hand tied behind their back, hoping that we would eventually choose peace over destruction. They have a hidden fleet that dwarfs anything in hegemony space. They could have ended this war in the first week, but they chose restraint. That's impossible, another council member protested. Our intelligence services have been wrong about everything, Vexthai interrupted. We attacked their peaceful contact ships and told ourselves they fired first. We called them savages while they were writing music to honor our cultures. We declared them too primitive to matter while they were building a fleet powerful enough to conquer the entire galaxy. He paused, looking directly at Chancellor Colthara. But they don't want to conquer anyone, Chancellor. They want to be our friends. For the next hour, Vexthai told the War Council everything he had learned during his captivity. He described watching human medics die trying to save hegemony soldiers. He spoke about families being reunited across enemy lines, about prisoners treated with dignity, about humans growing flowers from hegemony worlds in hope of future trade. He told them about Cho Yuna, barely more than a child, learning hegemony languages so she could communicate with captured soldiers. He described Dr. Kim Sora working 20-hour shifts to save lives without regard for species or nationality. He spoke about Captain Park Minho's patient explanations and genuine desire for understanding between their peoples. These are not the actions of monsters, Vexthai said. These are the actions of people who still believe that peace is possible, even after everything we have done to them. And if we don't agree to peace? Nixavoran asked coldly. Then in 47 hours their sleeping fleet awakens and the war ends anyway. But it will end with the death of billions of our people and the destruction of our civilization. Chancellor Colthara stood slowly. Admiral, you are asking us to surrender to a species we know nothing about, based on the word of a prisoner who may have been brainwashed. I am asking you to prevent the annihilation of everything we hold dear, Vexthai replied. Chancellor, I have served the hegemony faithfully for 40 years. I have never questioned our decisions or our methods, but I cannot stand by and watch you lead our people into a war they cannot win against an enemy who doesn't want to fight them. You speak of their military strength, another council member said. But you have no proof, Vexthai gestured to someone off screen. A moment later, Captain Park Minho appeared in the transmission. Honored council members, Park Minho said in perfect hegemony standard, I am Captain Park Minho of the Human Defense Force. Admiral Vexthai has asked me to provide verification of our capabilities. The holographic display split, showing both the War Council chamber and a new image from human space. A section of apparently empty space suddenly erupted with lights as dozens of massive human warships came online simultaneously. Their weapon signatures were unlike anything in hegemony databases. "This is one squadron from our reserve fleet," Park Min-ho said calmly. "We currently have 237 such squadrons in hibernation throughout the galaxy. We also have manufacturing facilities that can produce new vessels faster than your intelligence services believe possible." The War Council stared in stunned silence at the display of overwhelming force. However, Park Min-ho continued, "We would prefer never to use these weapons. We would rather spend our resources exploring the galaxy, learning from other species, and building a future where all civilizations can thrive together." He turned to look directly at Chancellor Kolthara. "The choice is yours, Chancellor. You can order the attack on our civilians and face the consequences, or you can choose to talk with us. We are willing to discuss any reasonable terms for peace." "And if we refuse?" Nixforan demanded. Park Min-ho's expression remained calm, but his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then this will be the last conversation between our species. The sleeping fleet will wake up, the war will end, and we will mourn the unnecessary deaths of billions of people who deserved better from their leaders." The transmission ended, leaving the War Council chamber in complete silence. For several minutes no one spoke. The implications of what they had seen and heard were too enormous to process quickly. Finally, Chancellor Kolthara turned to her fellow council members. "We have 36 hours to make a decision that will determine the survival of our civilization. I suggest we use that time wisely." In the detention facility on New Busan, Vextai sat back in his chair, emotionally exhausted. He had just betrayed everything he had been taught to believe, but he felt more at peace than he had in years. Captain Park Min-ho placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Admiral." "I hope so," Vextai replied. "I hope my people are wise enough to listen." "If they're not," Dr. Kimsora said quietly, "then at least you tried to save them. Sometimes that's all anyone can do." Outside the window, Cho Yuna was tending to her garden of alien flowers, preparing for a future she still believed was possible. Watching her work, Vextai found himself hoping that she was right.